So I saw a video of Patricia King where she's talking about famous people's so-called last words, and she made a point of pointing out the quotation that she brings up. It's of supposedly Aton LaVey, who was the founder of the Church of Satan, saying, oh my, what have I done? There is something wrong." So if you actually look up Patricia King's video about this, you'll actually see the video. She was actually talking about um, Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. Now, those particular words have not been verified. And also an example of it, also the words of Aleister Crowley, who was named as one of the most wicked men to be alive, who was a founder of the OTO movement. He was a Freemason. He was devout to sexual magic and all those kind of things. Wrote books about it. Also, his words, "I'm perplexed, Satan, get out." There's also a little bit of doubt on those words. The person who had been present with him, it was also reported that he was silent during his death, and only lightning actually hit during his thingy. And so take that for what it is. And so though we know that there's those type of stories which people get fanciful ideas about, I wanted to look at some of the people who are very well known in history, all the way from the 50s and all the way from the 60s, all the way down to the present day, who have passed on, popular celebrities, and their last words. Now, first off, let's start with Bob Marley's. And what I find quite interesting is, out of all these things, I want to bring in a verse that actually kind of narrows down the focus of all humanity's existence. Bob Marley's last words were actually known to have been, "Money can't buy life." Now, a lot of people have said, no, maybe he was saying money can't buy happiness, but that's what we know. But we know that he had all this stuff that he was during his cancer struggles and stuff like that. And so it's probably that he did actually mean money can't buy life. It's that life is that precious, and only those who are alive might pursue it beyond the meaning of life. Another person that I saw their words was Coco Chanel. Coco Chanel, the person who designed the popular handbag that a lot of people actually like. Some of the bags are actually exclusive on invitation purchases only. Her last words are known to have been, "See, this is how you die." So basically to mean that she was fulfilled in that. Now, is God fulfilled? Is God happy with what she did? I don't know about that. But looking at Coco Chanel, she was a very dodgy person in her life. I mean, like, the woman was devoted to a Nazi agenda. She dated a Nazi person and sold out to a lot of people. But hey, as long as she designed the nice purses that people actually think. So I don't know, when she said those words, "This is how you die," I don't know if she was thinking about, she might have been pleasing to people, but hey, what do we know? Those were her last words, to be specific. Charlie Chaplin. Now, you might know Charlie because of his famous roles in acting and stuff like that. His famous words were quite an interesting one when you actually see. On his deathbed, he said, may the Lord have mercy on my soul." And he then goes on to say, "Why not? After all, it belongs to him." He's very much clear in his role in television and stuff like that. He was very huge in comedy, and a lot of skits that you actually see, they take this idea of slap comedy. It's called slap comedy, the kind of comedy that he used to do from him. He mastered that art very well. His last words: "Acknowledge God's power over mankind," and stuff. And so quite an interesting set of words. I don't know about the next person, but Mahatma Gandhi, the silver right, what. His last words are very. I wonder what he saw. Honestly, when you see these words, his last words were, "Oh God." He said this in Hindi, I'm guessing. This is what exactly he was it translated to. "Oh God," after being shot. And because he lived a quite an interesting life. With his doctrines about having virgins around him and stuff like that. And so after he got shot, that's what he said, "Oh God." At that point, only God knows what he saw. Life flashed before him, which is more than we can say about this next person that a lot of people actually look up to, Tupac Shakur. Personally, this is just an example of a person who sold into worldly ideas and unfortunately bought into it to a point where at his death point, just after he got shot, the police officer who reached him and asked him who killed you, who shot you? Okay, who shot you, because he wasn't dead by the time. The words that he uttered they just tell you, do not buy into worldly ideas. It doesn't go anywhere. These last words were those highlighted in there. I don't speak like that. We're not going to say those words. Those are your last words. Sad that he was sold into that idea, or he was sold into all those, or he was deceived into believing in all these worldly ideas. Michael Jackson's own famous words were asking for milk. He asked for more milk. That was the last thing that he said before he head off. Now, for other people, it's a little bit more predictive. And that's exactly what we can say about James Brown. And like the man died around Christmas. And so he clearly had seen the end of it. He had seen the end of life at all aspects and all. But this is what he said. "I'm going away tonight." And, they thought maybe he's just too excited or what or something. No. That literally did end up being his last words before he actually passed on. Now, a lot of these people, what you will notice is a lot of these people that actually are either on substance and stuff like that, they tend to have words that kind of reflect back with almost a haunting nature, which is much what you can say about Charlie over here. His last word, he was a comedian, if you don't remember him. His last words were Chris, my bad. Chris, I feel his last words were, "Don't leave me." And it's almost like you could literally just take those words and literally fill them into the void, because it's like in life, when you abandon God, what's left? So his last words were, "Don't leave me." And unfortunately, I think he was with some woman on the streets, and she got out of the house, she stole his watch, and she left. And as he dozed off and stuff. And so she left. But the one person who had promised, "I will never leave you nor forsake you," that person never gave time for. Now, when it comes to giving life, when it comes to giving the person who is the designer of this life, which is God, that time when we are alive, it's quite an interesting one when you see the last words of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs' last words were, "Oh wow." He was amazed or what he saw or something, whatever Steve Jobs saw, he just kept saying, "Oh wow, oh wow." And that's how the man left, unlike Abu Tupac. Now, it tells you that one needs to really sit down and think about his own life, because when you think about the next person's words, the name of Maxi, he was a popular actor and so forth in the early years of color television. And his words, or his last words, as you might actually call it, was, "This is no way to live." Realizing at that point, this destructive sense of life that people have just doesn't go anywhere. One should question his position. Now, if one does not question his position, he will end up where this man ended up. a brilliant mind. A brilliant mind. But unfortunately, Stephen Hawking, brilliant mind. But unfortunately, his words will haunt him for all eternity. Because we don't get to do this life again. We don't get to come back and undo what we did when we were here. His last words were, there is no God, there is no heaven, basically. There's no direction to the universe. So basically, he just dismissed it. No, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. Science was, to him, all of existence. And unfortunately, his last words, I'm telling you, this man's last words will haunt him for his whole life. There's nothing much more than I can say about that. Which is pretty much reflected with people like Prince. Prince, when they wanted to pray for him, Prince's last words were, wait for a few days before you waste your prayers. There's no value for that. They pursue the other one. Just don't waste your time with that. Don't waste your time. Like when we are so consumed with this life, we can, that can wait. It's kind of like Jack Daniel's words. He wanted to take a drink. Man, them could not be bothered by anything else. He was kind of like, you know what? Let's get this drink and be done over with this life. Now, that book that I was saying, when Ecclesiastes closes, now remember, he's been to and fro with different concepts and enjoyment of life, all these things. He says, all is vanity, vanity. What is the worth of anything? When he wraps up that book, he tells us something that we should consider for our life on our everyday. Basically, he says, fear God and to keep his commandments. He says, out of everything I've told you, seeing how life is just a vexation of spirit, so he calls it. He says the one thing to live for is to fear God and his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. That shows you why the other gentleman said, this is completely not the way to live. We have that in our conscience, right and wrong. And when we come to that point, do we have to get to a point of death before we realize the value of life? To realize the value of serving God? For others, they do realize that. And, like Chaplin, when he's there, he says, hey, God. When you see the Bob Marleys, they realize the value of life. And it kind of echoes within that. Money just doesn't do it. Like you can run through all of life and have whatever you want. At the end of the day, life's value is way beyond price, way beyond pearls, way beyond diamonds and gold and whatever you can name. But if we don't price it properly, we can get into a huge mistake. We can make a mistake that some of these people made that they'll never get to make, that they'll never get to reverse. Hawkins' mistake, well, like I said, will haunt him his entire life. His dismissal in the afterlife will just echo back to him. You don't get to do this again. You do it right. But unfortunately, that's more than we can say for many of them. It's because in their whole life, they never lived for it. And even in their deathbed, most people, it just does not even reflect. They are unrepentant and stuff like that. Yes, there's the fake statements and whatnot, but there are these ones which we have, which you can see, which are verified statements and stuff like that. That's kind of very reflective. People think of themselves as if they are almost going to be here forever. But when you see this, you're like, hey, gotta think about it for a second. It's Ricky. Tell me your thoughts down in the comment section. Other videos down today to be down in the pinned comments, and I'm going to see you on a later on video. Because life has value, and that value is reflected when you are in honor of God.